Welcome. My name is Kelly Daly, and I am the lead for the North Coast School of Education Be a Teacher Intern Program and our EdTPA coordinator. This pre-recorded session will offer you an overview into the two teacher performance assessments used in California, the Cal TPA and the EdTPA. Our goals for today are to understand how the TPAs are assigned, who needs them, and how to find when they are due, the purpose and process of a teacher performance assessment, look at rubrics and guides, what the TPA might look like in a distance learning environment, passing scores and what to do when the test needs to be retaken, who can help, and next steps. This slide is a great way to understand the pathway to a preliminary teaching credential. On the left are the permit holders, PIPs and STIPs, which are short-term permits that allow individuals to teach for a short time as the teacher of record. Typically, these permit holders have something they need to do, either pass the CSETs or complete 120 hours of pre-service. Once completed, they typically enter into an intern program, such as the North Coast Be a Teacher Intern Program. Because of the executive order N-6620, these folks were allowed into intern programs with the notation that they will not be issued a preliminary credential until all state competencies are met. In addition, you will see up here the route for interns to obtain their preliminary credential. Again, the important item to remember and why we are here today is because interns were allowed to be issued preliminary credentials without passing their TPAs and/or RECA. I just want to emphasize, and I know you are all experiencing this pressure as well, that it's tough right now. Hopefully, we can support you to ease some of that pressure. Your mentee is not only a new teacher, a first-year virtual learning environment teacher, but also has the added pressure of passing their teacher performance assessment in a virtual learning environment. Now, let's look at the teacher performance assessment. The purpose of the TPA, whether it be the Cal TPA or the EdTPA, is to have the candidates demonstrate their competencies on the teacher performance expectations, or TPEs. The two assessments are very similar in that candidates will need to plan, teach, and assess students, and then do some reflection on those tasks. The Cal TPA structure is two instructional cycles. Cycle 1, learning about students and planning instruction, and Cycle 2, assessment-driven instruction. The EdTPA is very similar, however there are three tasks: the planning task, the instruction task, and the assessment task. Pearson is the testing agency for both the Cal TPA and the EdTPA. These websites linked here will give you submission dates as well as specific information regarding completing the TPA in a virtual learning environment. You will also find registration dates, release of score dates, fees, and the distance learning guidelines. You will see at the top where the candidate needs to register for the exam. Once registered, they will obtain and read the assessment guide, handbook, templates, and rubrics associated with the TPA. They will build a timeline using evidence tables that are in the handbooks, create the evidence, respond to prompts, plan, record their lessons, review their evidence against the rubrics, get acceptable levels of support, and finally upload and submit. What the support teacher needs to know is that once registered, your mentee will have access to handbooks that have these guides or templates. The candidate will use these to complete their TPA. These are examples from both the Cal TPA and the EdTPA. It shows what the candidate needs to do, what to submit, and what rubrics are involved in each of the tasks. So what does this look like in distance learning, teaching in a virtual learning environment? Here are the minimum requirements. For the Cal TPA, the teacher must be visible, all videos must be 5 minutes or less, and the number of students that must be visible. In Cycle 1, you can see in video clip 1, they need 1 or more students, video clip 2, 2 or more students, video clip 3, 1 or more students. And again, in Cycle 2, on this slide, you can see how many students need to be visible. For the EdTPA, the teacher must be visible, and there must be a minimum of 4 students that also must be visible. The video length really depends on the subject. Refer to the updated handbook by the subject for clarification. Each individual single subject has their own handbook, for example, PE, science, math. For both TPAs, the candidate must use unedited videos. Suggestions for the candidate might be to record the entire lesson. Practice recording a different lesson with students prior to the one that they will be recording and submitting in their TPA. Use the Enable Screen Capture mode in Google Meet under the tile, and identify yourself without using your name in the video. So for example, you might say, on the screen, I am presenting, I am the top middle row and remain at the top right corner. So what can your candidate do to the videos? They can trim the front and back off the video to get the required length. They can blur their students' names. Recording in Meets or Zoom, where the view jumps from person to the presentation back to the person. Also note that both the teacher candidate and minimum number of students can be seen and heard in the EdTPA. If the students' faces cannot be recorded, avatars, emojis, and/or names are acceptable alternatives for most content areas. This was taken directly from the EdTPA website. What your candidate cannot do to the videos: they may not add music, graphics, or piece clips together. The candidate and the students must be visible. All video must be in a synchronous learning environment. And clips longer than the maximum length may not be viewed. This is an example of what teaching in a virtual learning environment might look like. You see the teacher, you see her computer, you also would see the students on the computer screen. However, we've blocked those students out because we did not have permission to show them. But you can see that they're videotaping from the side. You can see both the teacher, the computer, the lesson that she's teaching, and also the students. Another example here, and again, we've blurred the students and the teacher's faces. This would be like in a Zoom recording where you see what the teacher is teaching, the teacher, and the students. So there are frequently asked questions about the distance learning filming. You can go either to the EdTPA website or the CalTPA website to see exactly what the conditions are for your candidate to film. Scoring. So for CalTPA, the minimum passing score for Cycle 1, which includes 8 rubrics, is a final cut score of 19 with one score of 1 allowed. For Cycle 2, which includes 9 rubrics, a final cut score of 21 is passing with one score of 1 allowed. For the EdTPA, multiple subject has an overall score of at least 49 that is scored across 18 rubrics. And for single subject, overall score of at least 40 run across 15 rubrics, with the exception of world language, which has an overall score of 35. So what happens when a candidate doesn't pass? For the CalTPA, the retake policy is if the candidate would like to retake the CalTPA instructional cycle, they would need to re-register, pay all applicable fees, and complete and upload a new submission for scoring. They must wait to receive their scores from the earlier submission before registering to retake a cycle. When a cycle is retaken, the previous submission is not considered during the scoring. All work must be completed according to the cycle instructions in use during the program year of the retake and will be scored according to the rubrics and passing standard in use at the time of the submission. In most cases, retakes must include new evidence that has not previously been submitted for scoring. However, if appropriate, the original, revised, or edited versions of previously submitted materials may be part of the retake submission. So for the EdTPA, although the 3 tasks are submitted at the same time, the candidate may only need to retake one of the 3 tasks. Candidates should consult with their faculty advisor before proceeding with a retake and can find important information in the guidelines for EdTPA Retake Decision-Making Guide. So who can help support the candidate? Credentials, the candidate's program, supervising teachers, K-12 partners, and consulting teachers and pre-induction support teachers such as mentors. There are certain acceptable and unacceptable supports for the candidate. Acceptable supports include discussing the EdTPA tasks and the scoring rubrics, discussing samples of previously completed EdTPA portfolio materials with permission granted from the program, discuss support documents such as making good choices about lessons or examples to use, using rubric constructs or rubric language to evaluate and debrief observations made by the cooperating teacher as part of a clinical supervision process, asking probing questions about the candidate's draft EdTPA response or video recordings without directly editing the writing or providing specific answers to EdTPA prompts, and arranging technical assistance for the video portion of the assessment. Absolute unacceptable supports are any editing of the candidate's official materials prior to submission. Do not offer critiques of the candidate's response that provide specific, alternate responses prior to submission, and do not instruct the candidates on which video clips to select for submission. Finally, don't upload candidate EdTPA responses on public access social media websites. These supports are also the same guidelines for the CalTPA. One thing we always want to make sure we talk to the candidates about is deficit thinking. Examples include, my students come from low socioeconomic backgrounds and are behind in their learning, or I have to dumb down the curriculum to meet my students where they're at. Any writing of this type is an automatic score of 1 on both the Cal TPA and the Ed TPA. What we encourage the candidate to do is an asset-based approach. It focuses on strengths. It views diversity in thought, culture, and traits as a positive assets. Teachers and students alike are valued for what they bring to the classroom rather than characterized by what they may need to work on or what they lack. Students' assets can include diversity in thinking, culture, traits, social emotional strengths, creativity, and intelligence. And this asset-based approach is what we want to focus on. Some of the more common mistakes we see in Cal TPA submissions is that they're not standards-based, that the students' assets were not leveraged in the planning, failure to cite evidence in steps 3 and 4, and neglecting the glossary. Thanks. I hope this was helpful as a general overview to both the Cal TPA and the Ed TPA. In our face-to-face session, we will be addressing how the need for passing the TPA can be woven into the inquiry process, and also have a specific breakout session for passing the teacher performance assessment. Credits for this presentation go to christyl@fsusd.org and was created by SlidesGo, including icons by Flat Icon, infographics, and images by FreePic, and illustrations by Stories. Again, thank you.